Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what I do during the winter months when I reduce my gardening outdoors because of the amount of cold weather out there. I take care of my indoor plants. I have just a small number of them, but I try to understand how to take care of them to bring out the best qualities. Today I'm going to be talking about pothos, also known as golden pothos, God's ivy, devil's ivy, money plants. So I'm going to be discussing the several ways I've been creating my pothos to make them turn out beautifully, because a lot of people feel that pothos are boring. They can actually be boring if you don't pay any attention to it. You just leave it in the pot and let it grow all the way as it chooses. I have one of them here which I'm going to show you later, but I'm going to show you one of the few that I consider to be a bit interesting. This one, the goblet pothos. I created this by single leaf in a goblet vase. Now, this is just a transparent glass vase that's got a kind of wrap of net around it. You don't necessarily need the net, it just has to be a sort of vase with a small volume of water put in. You can use lacquer or small pieces of stones, and then you put in 3 or 4 leaves. That's what I did. I started this with just 3 leaves. And when they start to grow, they wouldn't be vining and going all over the place because it's growing in water and it's growing inside a sort of a goblet. It's a small vase. So you can even place this in small places and be sure it wouldn't fall off because there are no trailing bits that's going to make it fall off. That's the one thing that I consider to be very beautiful about growing my pothos in this way. Now, this pothos has actually started to show the different forms. You can see this one is quite light, and this is bright green. Out of the 3 leaves that I put into this vase, 2 of them have gone away. They turned yellow and they went off. But just one is still remaining. And here is the one. So this is the one remaining leaf of the 3 leaves that I put into this vase. These other ones are new growths. And I just placed these on a nice mantelpiece. Sometimes I place it on the dining table. This is another flower vase that I could use in the same way if I wanted to create another one. So it doesn't have to be transparent and it doesn't have to go in like this. You can use a vase like this to make something of this sort. I find this very beautiful and it's not taking a lot out of my original pothos plant. So it's just a way of having plants all over the house in different forms. Not all the plants in your house are the same. There's a few people who have come here who have not actually been able to identify that the plants are the same. They believe I've got different plants. They are not different. It's just that I have tried to make them to grow in different ways. Thank you very much, Christy. I can see you. Much appreciated. So when you have your pothos, just take 3 or 4 leaves into water with some bits of rock, and you will soon have something like this. And if you wanted to create one for a smaller space, that is also possible. Here's another one created in just the same way. But the difference between this and the other one is that as soon as the leaves started growing, the new leaves started growing, I took out the bigger leaves so that they were not there to carry on photosynthesis and aid these leaves. So when I took out those bigger leaves, there were 2 of them, I took them out as soon as they started developing new leaves and roots. This means these have had to survive on their own. It makes them to be smaller, and you can place these maybe in an office or in just a small alcove that you want to decorate with a plant. It's still the same pothos, they're all from the same plant, but this makes them to come out looking different each time. The way that you plant your pothos is what's going to determine how it will come out. And I have it planted in a very small vase as well. I have other vases. You can get vases like this from shops and use it to create something like this. So your pothos doesn't have to be all boring pothos, because that's what a lot of my friends will say. Say, oh, all I have is a boring pothos, and I'll say to them, you can create your pothos and make it look more interesting. It also gives you something to do once in a while when you are a bit free timed. You can just try creating different formations with your pothos plant. And I consider this looks beautiful. So I started them from single leaves, and they've grown, they're looking really nice. I can see. Hello, Casti. Thank you. How's Venia? Hope it's fine. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your presence. I also have these photos that I've made with big leaves. You can see the leaves of this pothos and compare it to the leaves on this plant. These leaves are big for indoor pothos. And it goes all the way up, and it's going round in a circle and back again, and it's back to this side. This is the last leaf on this formation. It's up, it's coming to this side. Now, I created this using a form like this. I took a pothos at a point where there were a few leaves close together. Sometimes we'll cut off some of our pothos strands, and we'll see most of the pothos leaves are far away from each other, but there may be some that grow quite close to each other. That's point. You keep the leaves, maybe about 3 or 4, and then you put it in the water. So what happens is Because of their closeness, they will all produce roots, or for whatever reason. Because if you were trying to do this with three different spaced out leaves that are far from each other, you'd find it very difficult to get them to produce roots. But if they are much closer to each other, it's always easy to get them to produce roots. So now that I have this as success, when I'm going to start creating it into something like that, I would make sure there is no leaf that is above this little one that is just coming up. So I'm going to snip off this leaf, and this. So it means I'm taking out the two leaves that are higher than this new growth, because this were all the leaves I put in the water. That's one, two, I put five of them in the water. And then you can see roots coming out at 3 points. So I'm going to snip it off at this point so that it's only those areas that have roots that are put in the soil. I will now place it in such a way that it's not so close to the window. I want it to go and seek out the sunlight. So when it grows and it's seeking out the sunlight, I would be moving it backwards every week. So I move this plant backwards every week until it has grown up to a meter, and it keeps growing in a straight flat line trying to seek out the sun, and the leaves will be very, very big. The reason for this is because there's roots formation from three different points. The leaves will be very big because of the sunlight. The leaves just absorb energy from the sun and they keep growing big. It keeps seeking the sun and it keeps getting bigger. Now, when the pothos leaves grown to be about a meter long, I now take this. It's a white plastic stand. I turn it into a circle and then I wrap the pothos around it. So it was actually well grown before I came along and put it onto the circular stand. Because if I wanted it to be growing on the circular stand, the leaves will not come out so big. And I can show you what has happened after I've put it onto the circular stand and it's not going in a single straight line anymore. Although the leaves are still big, they have reduced in size because they keep trying to go upwards at some point. But remember that at those points, I want them to go downwards. Or they keep trying to go downwards at certain times, and I want them to go. So it's always like I don't want them to do what they are doing. This does not allow the leaves to grow to their most potential. So that's why I waited and allowed the plant to reach about a meter. It's enough to have one circular round the stand before I placed it in there. So when it was growing initially, I allowed it to stretch out to reach that 1 meter before I put the stand in place. That is how I grew this to be circular around the pothos. So I'm going to show it to you again. And here it is. I'm putting this back. Always be very careful with putting the pothos back Make sure you have all the roots completely immersed in water because you don't want some of them going dry. Now here is the circular pothos, and I just have it hanging against the wall somewhere, and the pot is placed on a shelf. So this just keeps growing around in a circle. That's how I created the circular pothos. I'm hanging it up now because I need to hang it up to do this video. It actually has a specific place that I keep it. It doesn't stay here permanent. It doesn't stay here permanently. I'm just bringing it here now, just to do this video. So you'll find out that the pothos is a very versatile plant. You can create it and make it your own. Make it your own design. You can make it into a tray, you can make it into a cycle, all of which I'll show you at some point. But right now, this pothos will just be growing in a stretch if you don't do anything about it. This is how the pothos looks. It's growing from a pot. And it's just growing and growing. And all it's trying to do is feed those leaves that are at the very top. It's no longer concerned about those leaves that are lower down. And you don't want that because it doesn't look beautiful. Now let's take a look at the leaves that are lower down when we don't actually do any creation with our pothos. They start to feel neglected. Although this plant is still alive, the leaves have started to yellow and the plant will still remain alive. But if you have your pothos maybe twisted around, then you will have it looking green and lush continuously. The leaves will not be dying. I'll show you another form of pothos that's been twisted around a bar. Now, this is the most common shape that we have of pothos as it is sold in shops. Yes, everyone has seen a pothos around a pool in the shops. And you see that whether they are high up or down low, they are all green. Because it's not just one strand trying to take all the nutrients to a great distance. They are all within a short distance. And I think that is what makes the plant to remain green and buoyant. I have decided to create small leaf pothos. And here they are. I actually call this the Rapunzel. I guess you may be able to see why. This is because in trying to create the small leaf pothos, because you may need pothos with small leaves. What I did was to just give it a cut, give it a snip somewhere, and that ends the plant because I wanted to use some of the leaves to do some creations. So when I snip it, I use it to do some creations, and I know that it's going to start growing back at a joint, but the leaves will be smaller. So this is what I get. This shows you that there are two plants wrapped around in this pot. I snipped the two of them, and here is what I have. It's pothos with smaller leaves, but it still carries on living. They are not going yellow. I like to leave them with all their scars because then I mean, it's all the memories that the plants have. It's not growing yellow and it's not aging, yet it's still growing new leaves. This is a nice way to keep a pothos if you have a bit of space that you can put it and it will keep growing for years. One thing I need to tell you about pothos is that it doesn't get root bound as quickly as many other plants. That's an advantage. So you can keep a pothos in the same pot for 2, 3 years. The only reason why you may need to check the pot is to make sure there aren't any insects. If you have an insect infestation in your indoor garden, then you may need to check. But the pothos is such a plant that is so resistant that you can not find it having so much disease. It's easy to care for, and you only need to water it about once a week. You fertilize as well. When you put this plant close to the sun, the leaves will start showing these different colorations. You have yellowish, green, and it's a mix. That's why it's called golden pothos. I'm going to show you a pothos that's been placed where there isn't much sun, and that has started to grow very green. This is because when this leaf is very close to the sun, this is when it's close to where the sun is shining, not the sun above. When it's close to sunlight, where there's sunlight, it doesn't need to be producing so much chlorophyll. But from the same exact plant, I cut up some leaves and put them in a pot, and they've gone green. That's because they are telling me we're in the shade, but we are still all right. So I'll show you that one now. This is still a mix of green and yellow as we have in golden pothos. So if you have the golden pothos that is green and yellow and you would like to make it a bit green, you cut off some of the leaves and start growing them, and make sure that in the more shaded area of your house, they will come up as green. I hope you can see this color very well. Yes, yellow, you can see one is yellow, but majorly when you look at this plant, I don't have to bring that other one back for us to compare it. This plant looks more plain green. This is because it needs to produce a lot of chlorophyll. And so the yellowness is going away because all those spaces are being occupied by chlorophyll and the leaves are coming out. It's plain green. That's one important thing about this golden pothos. It can start looking very green if we plant it in a lot of shade, but it won't die. That's why it's called God's ivy. The only thing you can do that probably kill this pothos is if you overwater it. If you put too much water, or if you plant it and there is no drainage holes, because every plant needs drainage holes in its pot, especially this. So you plant it and just carries on living. This is a hanging form and it's green. And because it's hanging behind some other plants, it's always in the shade, it has come up very bright green for me. So it's become a one color green pothos. So everybody says that pothos is different from the rest. And I say it depends on the amount of sunlight each one gets. This does not get a lot of sunlight. As such, the the color becomes greener because it needs chlorophyll to carry on growing. One more thing I'm going to say about this plant is, why does it remain just around the pot? This is because as it's been growing, I've been twisting it around inside the pot. I twist it around inside the pot and then it went around again and I came after it had gone about 12 inches. I'll twist that around inside the pot again. And those are the things you're seeing sticking out now. Now, some of them have rooted inside the pot, some of them have not rooted, but they have so much become immersed in the pot that they are not even trying to get out again. This is the next bit that I may be twisting. You can see this is the youngest leaf. When this grows and is quite long again, I will just twist it around so that it goes until this plant can go up as high as it can, until I see that it's no longer possible to twist it around. So I will show you the starting point of how to create a plant like this. First, to make it green, put it in a place that is well shaded. To make it green and yellow, let it have light. That's one thing about growing golden pothos. Let me put this back and I'll show you how I made this formation. Now, this is a pothos I grew from a single leaf again. And when it's rooted in water, I put it in the soil. So this is just it. Trying to just live his own life and go out on a boring journey, feeling no attention. But you saw how it was when I brought it out. So it's taking on that form because I've folded it into the pot. There's a stick in there. I folded it in there. And another corner as well. and it stays like this. So it's no longer going around. And after a while, I found out that some of them start to develop roots and they stay down there in the soil. And there could be times I want to put some soil on it. I carefully place some soil on top, and that helps it to root better. So to create one like the one I was hanging up, this is what I did with it. So just turn it around in the pot. But one thing that I've had to consider is that I have to do it in a pot that I want to keep it in. If not, how will it take the shape? So the way it will take the shape of another pot is by supporting it with stone mulch or pine cones. That's what's going to make it to stay in another pot. Because if I transfer it into another pot, then I need to put some of those on top just to ensure that it doesn't unravel and just move out of the pot and it stays in there. That's a nice way of creating another type of pothos. And I can honestly see this pothos is also saying we are one of those in the dark. Because some of your pothos will be in the light, you can't even miss it. The ones that are very far from the light, you will see that they will look very green and they would almost look different from the plant next to them that's just about 3 feet away. So this is how the sun affects the coloration of the pothos. It makes it either very green, it makes it green and yellow, and then I'm going to show you the other form. Because I got them all from this same plant. I put this down here. And here is this. It has so much yellow on it. You can see. In fact, I'll show you. This leaf was actually getting burnt. The yellow on it, when I saw it, I said, oh, this leaf is actually getting too close. It was so close to the window, it received too much sunlight. And you see the coloration on the leaves. It's a very yellow formation. So it stays in here. I'm yet to think about what shape I want to make with it. I just want it to keep growing, and probably I'm going to use it to create a tree, like a pothos tree, using a tree trunk for it in a mix. But I just allow it to stay close to the sun so that we can see the different colorations that comes out when a plant is very close to the sun or just normal distance, or if it's actually in a very shaded part of the house. This has been very close to the window, and that's why it's come out looking this bright. Now, I was telling you earlier about when somebody gives you a pothos cutting, or if you give somebody a pothos cutting, what you should say to them. Because you can see that this pothos cutting has a very long vine. This is because it used to have a leaf here, no, It had a leaf here, one leaf here, that makes two, one leaf here, and one in the place that I put into the water. So this was a pothos that had four leaves as a cutting. And then I put it in the water and I took out only one of the leaves and it was growing with three leaves. What's going to happen, as I said to you, they are so far apart that the first two leaves turned yellow and died. And that's what's going to happen. So only this leaf is the original leaf and it's still here. Only this leaf remains. And now we have a clutch of leaves has been produced. This is just an example of what would happen if you went and got a very long vine of pothos and you thought you would just plant it. It's not going to work. What you need to do is to cut it all into single leaves. That's the best way pothos would work. And when you're doing your cutting, some of them will not survive, but you're going to get about 90% survival rate. What I have here that I want to show you, this pothos that's grown here, the leaves are so close to each other that I can now decide to plant this together in a pot. Excuse me, please. I'm online, I'm live now. And go and look at me there. See me there. Yeah, see me there. Thanks. So sorry. It's calling me to find out if I'm live. Uh, Thank you. Thank you very much. And excuse me. Now, when we have photos as an entire stretch, you'd find out that you need to cut them all into singles unless they are so closely together that you can possibly stick all of them into the soil together. You can see how long this is, and it's just four leaves. And this plant has five leaves, except the one that was there originally. It has five leaves. This one was there, so I'm not counting this. I'm not counting this. But it has five young leaves that have just been produced. You can stick these five leaves into the soil because this mother will soon go away anyway. At some point, it will go away. I don't know how soon it will be. But if I want to create something with this on its own, I can take this and stick it in water or soil, and it will start growing roots, all of them together, because they are close, like the one I showed in the earlier part of this video. They will all start growing roots together. They are close together, and you can use this for a creation, a different form of photos that you want to make. You can use it for the one in the water, because it will just grow out and they will all be there just as leaves, and it will grow very well and beautifully. Or you can use it having so many roots to create large leafed pothos, like that one on the circular stand. Because what will happen is, because there are several roots all feeding this plant, at some point these five may go away, but one single one will come up and it will be a very large leaf. Because one secret thing with pothos is that when you plant pothos, that is meant to be the smallest leaf. The ones that come along should be bigger than the one you planted. That's when you know that your pothos is really thriving. Not that you plant a pothos leaf and the leaf that comes along is smaller and the one that comes after that is smaller and the one, no. Pothos does not work that way. When you plant your pothos, the leaf that you plant as your original leaf, if it's quite small, the one that comes out should be equal to the same size or a little bigger, and that will be the one that will determine their sizes as they go up. So you'd find that pothos can be used for several creations. One more thing before I put this away is, when I now cut this bunch off, I will have just plain roots. Yes, I will cut off this portion. You see, these roots will be there, but I will cut off this bit. When I cut off this plate, you will have some growth here because there's nowhere else and there are roots. So I will have some growth from here. That's what will happen. So I'll have something like this here again. So it's not going to be like, oh, once you cut this off, then it becomes wasted. If I cut it off and just leave it there in the water, some new ones will grow here. Or better still, if I don't cut it at this point and I cut it up here, the new leaves will grow here. And after they are done, I cut them off and I have this. So you can produce your leaves different nodes. But once they are all still together, it will be feeding only one node. So like this, I only have leaves from here. When I'm ready to cut this off, I will have leaves from this point. And when it's grown and I'm ready to cut it off as well, I will have leaves from this point. But these leaves, I'm going to have to put them in water to restart them again because they don't have roots of their own. Okay, now this pothos has large leaves as well. And you can see they are all standing upright, but they are not single leaved. They are just in there being twisted down like the other one. So that's why the leaves are all going up. And you can see I have one that I can use for a formation. If I place this behind that circular one, then I allow it to grow along. And in fact, that's where it was. And you can see that it's already having a bend. I untwisted it to do this video. So it's actually placed in the O of that circular one. It's placed on a stand. It fills the space in there, and then it grows its own around the same circular white stand. Now I can always untwist it at any time because it's not going to be growing leaves or it's not going to be growing roots into the plastic thing. If it was some other material, then you can say it will root down. But since it's not able to grow into that stand, I can always untwist it and do another formation with it because I want to create some money plant trees. And so I'm growing a few different forms for the look I want on the money plant. The important thing is that we have the leaves growing big at this point so that when we now start to make them into creations, they are free to start growing smaller leaves because they may be further in and they may not have so much sunlight when I have them far indoors. That is the purpose of growing this one. And the leaves just look so nice and healthy. It's not a plant that will stress you or it's going to die and if you don't water it, it's a very easy to deal with plant. Let me say hello to the Britain Farm Homestead. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you. So this formation, I can leave it as it is because you find out that it has so many leaves right below. This can be allowed to start growing up and we don't stand that risk like this one. Let me put it down. If you don't have our pothos in any way or formation, they may start to grow so long that the vine becomes such a great length. We almost have to go a lot. I had to twist it around this because I left it and it just kept going in one single straight line. Only the top look green and nice. The bottom part started losing some leaves. Yes, I have a new growth on the side. That's a good thing to see. I have two new leaves actually growing on the side below, but it could have looked better if I had done something. This pothos. So this is the reason why I'm doing my pothos into different shapes. And if you have somebody does not actually like to look after different plants, oh, it's too stressful, I have this, I have that, it's becoming, then you can grow your pothos and they don't look alike. They will actually look like different plants. You can have a pothos, like I said, for a small space. You can have a pothos that will hang up there You can have a pothos that looks very green because you put it where it's very shady. All these different forms create different looks in our pothos. And that is one reason why I think the pothos plant is very versatile, very interesting, and very easy to work with as somebody who wants to decorate indoors with plants. After having these photos, it's actually encouraged me to try to understand what other plants want. Because these plants, they just want you to handle them in certain ways and then they will grow for you. Please don't put that black pot. If you get these photos from someone as a friend and you put it in water, then you have to start planning and thinking what you're going to do with it. If you want it to just keep growing or you want to make certain patterns with it, then is it going to be in a very large pot? I have one like that on the other side, but it's several of them, it's not just one. I can't use just one pothos in a large pot. It's this is just for small pot decorations. In a very large pot, I had to put about 6 to 8 separate plants like this. And then it grew up and came down like a curtain. That was what I called my curtain pothos. And that is one thing that I find very interesting about the pothos. And I say it's not a boring pothos, it's actually very versatile. You can use it to create many formations. And it's bringing oxygen into the environment because it uses carbon dioxide like every other plant does. It gives us oxygen just for our breathing life. I find the pothos to be a very interesting plant and it actually does a lot of good when you see it in many formations. It's always surprising me the different ways in which a pothos can grow. From just the one most usual shape that I would buy from the shop. I have gone to many garden centers to buy pothos, and this is the most usual shape. It will be in a pot and it will have this in the middle and it's expected to just go twisting, twisting, twisting all right around it. At some point, I just thought, I gave it a snip and I created all my other pothos because this one alone is not what I want. And this has created smaller leaves. And so I call this Rapunzel. You want to use this as a garland, or I'm sure you already understand, I will be using this for some creations very soon. So I was very glad. I was actually awaiting it because I knew it's going to grow back. I was actually awaiting this new growth. And when we get back into the summer and they get bigger, we're going to come along, snip this off, and create many formations of pothos that are going to look interesting. So I hope you will all go along with me, try to take that your pothos and do different formations with it. Because I believe the pothos It's an interesting plant. It's always giving you surprises, the ways in which you can form it. You can keep snipping and snipping and cutting and cutting. The main mother plant remains alive, and you can create so many different pots of pothos plant out of your one single pothos. But just don't leave them growing in a straight line, because after a while the distance from the tip will be so much that obtaining nourishments from the roots will be a lot of job, and you will just see vines losing leaves. So the vine of that pothos will lose leaves if it's because of gravity. It's too far away. If it was just growing on the ground, then it may not. The leaves will probably remain, because what will happen is it will attach itself to the ground and start to grow another branch. But just being there, just going away from gravity, that plant will start feeding only the leaves that are way up. But with this one that I have, it's not lost, because all that vine, when I'm ready to snip it off, is going to be used to create new plants, because it's not actually the leaf that you need in producing a new pothos plant. It's the leaf node. And I've done it. I've done it before. Let me find it. Yeah. Okay. 1 minute. Yeah. So I found a situation in which there was just vines and vines, and what do we do with this? So I thought, let's see. I cut them up, and that's it. Just cut between two nodes. This one node at the bottom, one node at the top. It was just a plain green stick. I had to melt them, and I put them in the water. And that plain green stick is grown. This one is so surprising. That plain green stick is grown. It's grown leaves as if there was a leaf there before, which was just the vine that I got to put in here. Now, let's have a look at this one, because it's actually grown a leaf right out of the bottom. And the thing is, this one was very small. So I left three nodes. It was very small, so I just thought, oh, but I just threw it in the water along with the one I'm trying to grow. But see, I'll show you the three nodes. It had a node here, and one at the very top. And now it's grown so much roots, it's grown a new leaf, it's grown two new leaves, and then another new leaf up here. And that's because I threw in just three noded portion into the water. But the thing is that two of the nodes were in water. That's why two of the nodes started developing roots. So the two nodes started developing roots, and this is what I have from just a green plant that was dying. This is possible. So it's not very easy to get rid of the golden pothos because it lives on. It's really a very versatile plant. I've said that so many times. You just need to buy one plant from the garden center and you can start whatever we want your plants to look like. If I don't like that look, you create another look. That's what the pothos plant is about. And I hope you get some good and interesting watch out of this video. It's been nice having you around. If you have any questions, please put them in and I will answer. Thank you very much for being here. I'm sure you've seen all the forms of photos that I've shown this evening. Please like this video and if you can, please share it. Thank you. This is my best one. I come here every day and I'm so happy to see. You also have to remember to water. If your plant is growing in water, you have to remember to water it. Keep watering it. Don't allow the roots to start sticking out. Please like, thank you very much. Please like my video. I appreciate your coming and I hope you be able to do a few things. If you have some photos, you can do a few interesting patterns with your photos. They make for good activity. You can do it in the winter, in the summer, in the autumn, because you're doing it indoors. So it doesn't really matter. The pothos will grow because the temperature is right. Just put it in water and watch. It will grow faster if it's summertime or springtime, but it will definitely grow in winter because we're looking for some winter activities that we can do. Apart from planning for next year, we also want some activities, some things we can grow in the winter before we are able to start growing those plants that are for food. This makes an interesting activity for me and I've enjoyed making it. I've made so many of this because I just enjoyed the result that I got. So I've made so many of this. It's just a single leaf and they are just getting higher. You saw that there was another one, although that one is not a single leaf, but I'm just twisting it around so it's just getting boiled out and it's getting bigger. That's just the thing about the pothos plant. they will make space for each other. The leaves will make space for each other and allow each other to grow. So you just come along and you see your pothos plant. Okay, you just come along and you will see your pothos plants and all the leaves are growing bigger. That's because they'll make way for each other. They don't actually rest on each other. They all stand upright if they have to. They stand upright and it creates a beautiful picture. That's how versatile the pothos is. And the vines are right there. You can see inside the pot and I've twisted them to go round. But first you have to wait for it to grow like this before you do the twisting. You can't twist it if it's just two leaves because that leaf will be under stress. If the leaf is under stress, it will probably snap. So the best way is wait for it to grow. This is grown from just one single strand. It's not several as you would have in many pots. Use several pothos if it's a large pot. But for all my smaller pots, I use just one or two strands because it works better that way. You can see all this twisting that has gone on. There's one here, this is one, and it goes like this. You can see it on the lip of this pot, and there's one just inside. Actually looks nice. And this is one. You can see, that's it. And that's actually the highest leaf. This is it. That's the tallest leaf, and it's just here. So they give each other room by growing upright, and then the leaf stalk will get thicker. The leaf stalk will get thicker. That's what's very nice about the pothos. If they receive the sunlight, the leaf stalk will get thicker and you can see the growth going on. I mean, we've been in fall and as cold as it is, these are still going on. That's an interesting plant. Some plants will not even grow, even if they are inside the house. They will definitely go away. I'll show you some of those type of plants. It's only in the summer they want to grow. They don't want to grow in the winter. Yes, I know they are taking their rest, but it's just so interesting to see. Okay, so please leave my like on my video. I would very much appreciate it. Don't forget, everybody, thank you. And you can see the stem of this pothos is very thick and very strong. The reason for this is because it's not just growing from one root node. I put in about 6 root nodes into the soil. Remember the one I showed you where there were like 3 root nodes? That will grow a plant with a very strong stem. It will almost be standing upright. But there's no point allowing it to stand upright. It's always better to allow it to grow horizontally and then use something to support it upright. Because allowing it to grow upright will put too much pressure on the plant and it can just start not being this strong anymore. But as it is now, the stem is so strong and the leaves are growing really big. It's what is nice to say about the pothos. Thank you very much, everyone. I think we'll be taking questions now if anybody has questions, and then it will be the end of my live stream. Okay, then. It's bye bye and see you again tomorrow. Thank you for coming.